After visiting a factory spewing steam, King George III of Britain asked the factory manager, "What products are made in your factory?" The manager replied, "Your Majesty, we are producing something that all monarchs dream of. In fact, this product was the productivity brought about by the Industrial Revolution, as well as the resulting comprehensive national power." However, when future generations pick up a history book, they will inevitably have many questions in their minds. Why did the Industrial Revolution break out in Britain first in modern history? What changes did the Industrial Revolution bring to Britain and the world? Since the emergence of capitalism in Western Europe, the bourgeoisie has been the key force driving production revolutions. Capital is inherently independent, and capitalists needed broader markets to satisfy their greed. Thus, the fundamental reason for the outbreak of the First Industrial Revolution was the pursuit of profit by capital. However, the outbreak of such a large-scale technological revolution still required a trigger and a breaking point. Nowadays, many people, influenced by various pop magazines, mistakenly believe that James Watt's invention of the steam engine marked the start of the First Industrial Revolution. But Watt and his steam engine were just representatives of that revolution. The real start of the First Industrial Revolution was triggered by the spinning jenny. In the 1760s, British textile worker James Hargreaves invented a new type of spinning machine, which he named after his daughter. Soon, the bells of the Industrial Revolution echoed across the European continent, and Britain successfully emerged from this revolution, becoming one of the most powerful nations in the world. However, if Hargreaves' invention had emerged in other countries at that time, it might not have caused such a sensation. That was because British society already had a relatively mature bourgeois class that understood the value of new inventions. In 1784, King George III of Britain visited the factory founded by Watt and his partner, and was immediately shocked by the productivity displayed in the industrial age. From then on, the British government began to encourage various invention and creation activities, and as merchants' tax revenues increased, Britain's national treasury gradually became fuller. Using Watt's improved steam engine technology, the British built their own steam-powered warships. From that moment, Britain entered a new era of overseas expansion. After the Industrial Revolution strengthened its power, Britain almost immediately accelerated its pace of external expansion. Before this, the number of British overseas colonies was limited. Besides a few American colonies seized from the Dutch, they had no real power to expand their colonial territories. But with new weapons powered by steam, the British grew bolder. Almost simultaneously with the First Industrial Revolution, Britain launched a colonial war against India. In the past, Westerners had seen India as a powerful nation in the East, but when the British used their artillery to force open India's doors, they saw the decay and wealth of the Mughal Empire. From that moment, vast amounts of gold and silver treasures were shipped back to Britain, some becoming luxury goods on the market, and others being presented to the royal family. From this point onward, the British lived in luxury, built upon the tears and blood of the Indian people. After gradually conquering India, the British set their greedy eyes on China to the north. However, China was then in the Qianlong era, a time of supposed prosperity, and the British couldn't quite gauge China's true strength. They decided to send an embassy to investigate China's situation. This British diplomat, George Macartney, was sent by the British king with a large number of gifts under the pretext of celebrating Emperor Qianlong's birthday. However, Emperor Qianlong, considering himself the ruler of a superior nation, looked down upon such a distant envoy from a foreign country. Nevertheless, Macartney took the opportunity to gather detailed information on China's actual situation. Through his observations, he realized that although China's rulers saw their country as prosperous, internal social conflicts were at an all-time high. Moreover, the Qing dynasty's elite Eight Banners military force had degenerated into a ceremonial unit, mainly focused on parading birds and collecting salaries rather than engaging in military training. During his visit, Macartney also witnessed the exploitation and oppression of the people by local Chinese officials. This atmosphere of decay and backwardness led Macartney to conclude that Britain could indeed defeat China and open up a massive market with a population of hundreds of millions. In 1840, the British used the excuse that the Qing government's ban on opium, enforced by Lin Zexu, had harmed British merchants' interests to launch the Opium War. Thus began the humiliating chapter of Chinese history. History proved Macartney right. Once the British attacked China, the fragile system of Qing rule collapsed almost immediately. By 1842, Emperor Daoguang was forced to agree to the infamous Treaty of Nanjing, ceding great benefits to the British. After the First Opium War, Britain reaped the largest batch of benefits from the First Industrial Revolution. After this, they extended their reach to Burma, Afghanistan, and even the Middle East. At this time, the British had absolute confidence in their military power. Some British government documents of the time even proudly referred to Britain as the empire on which the sun never sets. To note, since the era of the Spanish Empire, no other nation had dared to adopt such a title, illustrating how arrogant the British had become. But ultimately, Britain was only a small island nation in the North Atlantic. The First Industrial Revolution provided Britain with the opportunity for development and expansion, but history never favors a single nation or people forever. The opportunities brought by the First Industrial Revolution certainly made Britain an unparalleled sun-never-sets empire, but there were other powerful countries on the European continent. After Britain's rise, nations like France, Belgium, and Italy followed suit, which frustrated the British. At the end of the 19th century, the Second Industrial Revolution turned Germany into an economic powerhouse in Europe. By this time, Britain, as an old capitalist empire, was struggling to keep up with these emerging nations. The two world wars that followed dealt a direct blow to Britain's economy. Without the substantial economic aid provided by the United States after the war, Britain would have likely sunk to the status of a second-rate nation. However, after accepting American aid, Britain had to align politically with the United States. Since then, Britain has become a puppet of the US, no longer resembling the pioneering spirit it had at the start of the First Industrial Revolution. Of course, the First Industrial Revolution still left a considerable legacy for today's Britain. In Britain today, there are many industrial-themed tourist attractions, which are products of the mass production era of the 18th and 19th centuries. The British workers of that time could hardly have imagined that one day, the places they toiled in would become tourist attractions selling tickets. This is also a microcosm of Britain's rapid decline. Although modern Britain no longer holds the political influence it once did, it still boasts one of the highest standards of living in the world. This, of course, is closely tied to centuries of colonial plunder and capital accumulation. After centuries of development, capitalism's system and logic have permeated every corner of the British Isles. This mysterious force that spurred the First Industrial Revolution has firmly taken root in British society. While capitalism certainly has its chaotic and undesirable aspects, it remains an advanced system compared to the feudal systems once prevalent across Europe. It has elevated human productivity to its highest level in millennia. However, as the halo of industrial might fades, Britain is once again revealing its true nature as an island nation. When the dividends from the Industrial Revolution were fully consumed, the British could only accept their fate of decline. Today, the British have lost the courage and arrogance they once displayed during their era of overseas expansion. They now appear more content with a quiet, unassuming existence. Perhaps, for them, this is a blessing in disguise. After all, in the long history of humanity, countless nations and individuals have tried to leave their mark, but few succeeded. Most of them were washed away by the tides of history. As a small island nation, Britain led an unprecedented technological revolution in human history. Even centuries later, people still remember this chapter of history, albeit with a hint of melancholy. But for those who contributed to this brilliant achievement, it may be a unique source of comfort and pride.